So as the construct known as 2023 comes to a formal end soon, I wanted to do a video on influence because I've really been talking so much about this in one way or another, whether it's the cults and these charismatic cult leaders who have so much influence, or the Ph.D, this group in South America where socially influencing another person is incredibly taboo. No one tells someone else what to do. So we see that really huge contrast. And to paraphrase Bertrand Russell, he said, the problem with the world is that fools are filled with confidence, but wise people are filled with doubt. And that's a really nice way to capture the left and right brain, because as we've seen, if you've watched my videos, whether it's the split brain patients or people who have right brain damage, the left brain spins its story after story, and it never questions the validity of these stories. Whereas the right brain seems necessary as the devil's advocate to come in and question. And again, one of the things I've been working on as a theme is that thoughts are not what they seem to be. And the way that we deconstruct the thinking process is not through more thinking. It's through the devil's advocate. It's through doubt and right hemisphere consciousness. But what I wanted to do in this video is just to show you that how contrasting Western culture is, because here we have the Ph.D, and they clearly don't want to tell anyone else what to do. And a recent survey looked at 13-year-olds to 38-year-olds and found that 86%, so the vast majority of them, wanted to be social influencers. And so that's a huge contrast with this right brain culture in South America. In fact, 12% of those surveyed already thought of themselves as social influencers. And that's because we see this radical difference in values. And in the Ph.D culture, they see reality. And again, in reality, no one person has any power to influence another person. We get caught up in stories. And all of a sudden, if someone becomes a social influencer, their ability, their power, in the same way, or at least a similar way that we saw with the cult leaders, that their influence seems to carry more weight. And I wanted to also just briefly mention a book by Vanessa Bond. She's a social psychologist, and her book is You Have More Influence Than You Think. And it's a really interesting collection of data and some stories of hers where, I mean, the title says it all. Here we are in the West, we want more influence, and the truth is we have more influence than we think. So just to give you one study where people went up and randomly complimented a stranger and then thought about how much they influenced that person, and they really underestimated how much influence they had. And so going up and randomly complimenting a stranger actually can change that person's entire day. And in our thinking system, we trivialize it and we don't give it, we don't attribute as much causal power as it actually has. And so one of the things Vanessa suggested in the book is keeping kind of a journal or an inventory of how much influence you have. And I thought this is kind of an interesting way to start the year, because instead of wanting more influence, we might want to assess how much influence we already have, because it can become very subtle. I remember one coworker, she would always wait till I had left the room, and then she would start a conversation or ask a question. And so I would always have to go back, and I thought, well, isn't this funny? You know, now my whole life is thrown off about 15, 30 seconds or something like this. And it's the same thing that goes through the day. If you are at a red light and it turns green and you wait an extra 10 seconds, you've thrown everyone off behind you 10 or so seconds. And so our ability for influence is already quite dramatic, particularly because we're socially connected. And so it might be an interesting way ponder how much social influence you already have, rather than getting off on this left brain fantasy of wanting more.